Do you find that amusing? Like a razor through silk, her voice sliced through the laughter as she spoke. The park quietly collapsed in waves rather than all at once. It was one of those times when people live in a world where time doesn't stop. Officer with baton still hooked beneath the woman's skirt, Brent froze, sly as a fool caught in the middle of a practical joke. When he saw her face, his laughter dried on his lips. She didn't feel ashamed. She was not in a panic. She appeared to be a storm awaiting approval to break. He realized then that she was more than simply a woman he had fooled with. This was a serious matter, something else entirely. Additionally, he had just lighted the fuse. He had ruled the block 30 seconds before. Broad-shouldered and cocky, he believed that charm could make anything better. A baton beneath the hem, a few giggles. She would flinch or even yell, and his buddy would laugh. Another of his innocuous tales of you had to be there events. She didn't flinch, though. She spun around as though she had been waiting for it, and as though she was daring him to do it. Her gaze met his. Dark, steadfast, and unafraid. After that, she reached into her leather purse. Not stumbling, not hurrying, composed and accurate. She took out a thin black wallet and opened it. The sun glinted on the gold badge. Civil Rights Division federal agent. Brent blinked. What are you? She furrowed her brow. Do you still find it amusing? As if it had scorched him, his hand dropped from the baton. He looked at his buddy, who was now looking in a different direction. I didn't mean you didn't think, you see. She interrupted. That poses a greater risk. She didn't shout. She made no threats. She simply gave him a long, uncomfortable look before leaving with her dignity unaltered and her skirt still in place. However, his left side was bleeding on the pavement. Long after she had left, he remained standing there. Not yet, at least not out of guilt. More due to misunderstanding. He simply knew that he was no longer in control. He had no idea what had just transpired. Within 12 hours, the report was filed. She did not, however, file charges. She asked for something worse. Change of assignment. For him, not for her. He had 2 weeks to follow her around. Study, watch, and take in. In the memo, there was the term, take in. Until he did, he had no idea what it meant. Celia Monroe was her name. A woman who walked as though she had nothing to prove and everything to defend. No spouse, no children, no small conversation. He trailed her through courtrooms, hospitals, and shelters. Women who recoiled at the sound of boots were the ones they spoke to. Nurses whose complaints were misplaced. Like they were made of glass. Girls whispered stories onto tissue paper. Celia heard what everyone had to say. Brent observed. On the 5th day, something happened to him that altered him. A 15-year-old girl described how, while in detention, a school security guard made fun of her clothing. When she said that, she chuckled, but her hands continued to shake. Unable to meet her gaze, Brent sat there. He had laughed the same way, spoken in the same tone, and used the same phrases. By the 8th day, he was not asleep. In any case, not well. He kept hearing his chuckle reverberating in the trauma of another person. Celia gave him a file on the final day. There was a surveillance still and a photograph inside. A young woman with her arms crossed, face turned, and shoulders hunched. He narrowed his eyes. The attire was distinct. Although the hair was shorter, the eyes remained the same. That was me, she remarked. No charges were brought against the 17 public park officer. They said that I overreacted and misinterpreted the circumstances. As a result, I became the unavoidable circumstance. He gazed first at the picture and then at her. Why did you give me a pass? No, she answered. I forced you to look. They continued to stand silently for a while. He wanted to express gratitude. He wanted to apologize. He knew that none of the 100 things he wanted to say would matter. He remained silent, and she nodded as if it were the best thing he had done all week. He came back to watch over another individual. Not flawless, not changed, but altered. When jokes got out of hand, he spoke up. When someone flinched or said, "Remember that woman in the skirt?" he took note. Since the lesson had only started and the joke was over, he simply nodded and turned to leave. Tell us where you are watching from in the world before we wrap up this story. Together, let's connect the dots worldwide. There are those who learn, best by listening. Others must be viewed, undone, and reconstructed. Perhaps this narrative wasn't a story if it caused you to pause, really pause. It might have been a mirror. Would you have halted it before it began or laughed too? Tell us.